Now it's time to listen to the rich, full-bodied, and vibrant voice of our keynote speaker, Seth Andrews.
So here I am in this room, and I'm surrounded by, I don't know how many PhDs were on the agenda today. You know, on the roster, we had all these pedigreed educators, researchers, scientists, biologists, psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists, and your keynote speaker is me. Me. Like, this is not a humble brag. I'm at the back looking at the agenda going, I literally turned it upside down going, are you kidding, really? But, you know, it is an honor to be here. It is an honor to be among these featured speakers, and it is a joy to be among friends. Thank you so much for having me again. My listeners often call in with a frequent question. They say, do you have any hope? You have any hope that it's going to be okay? And man, I wish I had a better answer for them. Sometimes I go all John Lennon. We all know the lyrics. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do, nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. And I do imagine. I imagine a world where border lines aren't dividing lines, where the one true religion is human goodness, and where we all are living in peace together. I imagine, and I try to hold on to just a little bit of hope. But I have felt starved of hope, just starved of hope. I'm not sleeping well. When I'm awake, I'm spinning, my brain is spinning like a hard drive, and all I can really hear is the white noise of a world gone crazy. My reserves are low, my optimism is even lower. And instead of inspecting great things, I have come to this moment where I fear the worst in most situations. Can anyone relate to that? I'm reminded of that line from George Carlin. He said, when you scratch a cynic, you find underneath a disappointed idealist. And there's still some little flame alive somewhere that says, wouldn't it be nice? I talk to my wife, Natalie, all the time about how it feels like democracy and decency are circling the drain in the United States. What happens if we collapse upon ourselves? And I wonder if it will have died of two specific things: absurdity and cruelty. Now, the Oxford Dictionary defines absurdity as the quality or state of being ridiculous or wildly unreasonable. And I think we can all agree that every day has been a blitzkrieg of the ridiculous and the wildly unreasonable. Ours isn't a culture where these terms are simple adjectives. They are a demographic. For instance, a recent survey of Americans has 56% of residents saying we should not be using Arabic numerals, the decimal-based number system that Europe adopted from the Arabic world 800 years ago. More than half of the U.S. doesn't see 0 through 9. They see Arabs, and they want nothing to do with that. In our absurd country, vaccines cause autism, and more recently, fluoride can kick down your IQ. The earth might be flat. Airplane lights and stars in the sky are actually a coordinated drone army. The world's richest man and major Trump influencer says that C-section babies have larger brains because vaginal birth squishes baby heads. The presidential inauguration speech of 2025 included a reference to transgender mice. Georgia's 14th congressional district re-elected Marjorie Taylor Greene twice. Twice. The Jewish space laser woman. The woman who said that the acceptance of LGBT people would make straight people go extinct within 5 generations. Who warned about Bill Gates growing fake meat in a peach tree dish. Who warned that our Congress was being spied on by the gazpacho police. On and on and on. Georgia, District 14, looked at this woman and they said, "More, please. I would like more of that, thank you. More, please." By the way, I bought this for my office. It actually sits on a shelf. It's made by a company called Concord Aerospace, a company that obviously has a great sense of humor. It is an actual Jewish space laser. This is a bona fide electrical switch. You can actually take the light switches out of your wall and you can replace it and turn on your light and ceiling fan with a Jewish space laser. Now, I don't know if they meant to misspell arc reactor or not, but because it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm going to say it was done on purpose. And sometimes it's all we can do is just to laugh at all of the absurdity and how confident the absurd believe that they are not. Absurdity. And then I just get numb from the dumb. You ever feel that? Numb from the dumb. And I'm reminded of Carl Sagan's words from The Demon-Haunted World. I have a foreboding of an America in my children's or grandchildren's lifetime when the United States is a service and information economy, when nearly all the manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of a very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues. When the people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority. When clutching our crystals and nervously consulting our horoscopes, our critical faculties in decline, unable to distinguish between what feels good and what's true, we slide almost without noticing back into superstition and darkness. It's like he had a working crystal ball, isn't it? And then after the absurdity comes the cruelty. The callous indifference to or pleasure in causing pain and suffering. There is an epidemic of cruelty in the United States right now. A cancer of cruelty. And we have seen daily examples of this. In that culture, immigrants aren't human beings, often trying to escape suffering and harm, but are instead vilified. They're parasites, they're pushers, they're predators. Gay people are sodomites, deemed wicked by both God and man. Trans people are bathroom stalkers, hunting your children. Murdered school children are ignored while AR-15s are protected. Where the poor are too weak and pathetic to not be poor. Did you guys see that Truth Social post by Donald Trump where he said, "Only the weak will fail"? This is his philosophy. The strong crush the weak, and if you suffer and you fail, it is your own fault. We've seen throughout human history in-groups building up walls to lock out the out-groups, the other, the vermin. And in those moments of cruelty, they deny someone else his or her humanity. I like this definition by psychologist and journalist Brian Resnick. He says, dehumanization is a mental loophole that lets us harm other people. How often have we seen human beings dehumanized to justify their mistreatment? How many authoritarians have set false narratives about them and demanded their mistreatment? In the culture of cruelty, scientists are vilified, insurrectionists get exonerated, neo-Nazis march with flags and torches, and of course, the poster child for American cruelty is this man. The guy who is the person we teach our children not to be. Liar, cheat, bully, abuser, predator, a man so filled with poison he can't even say Merry Christmas without telling his declared enemies to rot in hell. 77 million of my fellow Americans turned toward this man, raised their hands, and said, I want that. The American experiment may die of absurdity and cruelty. But lately, when I look at the man who would be king, and this second image on the right posted by the official White House social media account in February, when I look at this and I think about this, I wonder if empires die of authority. Now again, we recognize there are necessary contexts for authority. A parent tells a child, do your chores, make your bed. Don't bully your sister or brother. A teacher says, do your homework, don't disrupt the class. Police officers arrest the criminal. Courts sentence people who are acting illegally and antisocially. Managers are overseeing employees. We understand authority. We even get chains of command, right? But it's authority with accountability, authority with a small a. And yet, time and again, we see people who are primed by nature, nurture, or both to surrender themselves to authoritarian strongmen, savior figures. And again, the people who are responding, these are not just a few people, they are an entire voting demographic. They are willing to suspend all rules, remove all checks and balances, and to give up everything from their passwords to the rule of law to the United States Constitution. And many, especially many American evangelicals, are primed from childhood for loyalty oaths and allegiance promises. This is a psychologist. Her name is Dr. Karen Stenner, and she has spent a lot of her career chronicling the rise of authoritarianism and far-right politics. And she has noted how cruelty, intolerance, and blind obedience threaten democracies. Some characteristics of the types of people who respond to authoritarians: they have a desire to seek normative order, or better yet, they seek a normative order or the status quo. They have a resistance to change. They talk a lot about the good old days. Make America great again. Notice how many MAGAs harken back to a time when the country catered most to them. Identity believers are often threatened by those of a different identity. Somebody's always coming. They're a danger. They're a threat. They're going to take what they have and they're going to harm who they love. As we're seeing in the United States, authoritarian culture is prepared to smash it all down if it means rewarding the righteous and punishing the wicked. Ideological lockdown. No compromise. This is considered a strength. Compromise is weakness, maybe even betrayal. Theirs is a world of absolutes. All, nothing, black, white, freedom, tyranny, good, evil. Dr. Stenner estimates that about a third of individuals are wired to respond to authoritarian figures. Now, I realize I might be making a correlation-causation jump here, but I find this is an interesting number, right? Let's look at the 1/3 next to the 2024 U.S. presidential election. We see the race divided almost exactly into thirds, with an authoritarian elected right along that 30% mark. I find that interesting. I also find it interesting How many of those Trump voters are Bible literalists who have been primed by their faith to respond to Savior strongmen? The shepherd and the sheep model, right? Pastors and priests are given special treatment. I was at an event in Orlando, Florida, a few years ago, and they do a Friday night costume party. And I went as a priest. I got a legit looking outfit too. It was awesome. So my plane landed, ran up to the room, got on my priest outfit, and I walked out to the elevator, and there was a family of people on the elevator, and they're laughing and joking and carrying on and having a great time. And I walked on, and you should have seen, they immediately immediate deference. As I walked past the cafe, as I walked down the halls toward the conference center where the party was being held, it was remarkable how I was treated. I could have made almost any request, I will bet, and they would have granted it. They had afforded me authority. Why? Because they had been primed to see the clerics as authority figures, to surrender some of their own critical thinking. They wouldn't have even asked the critical questions. Oh, he's clergy, let's do it, right? The sermons, these are presented as roads to be traveled, choices to be made or avoided. The authority of clergy, which is of course handed down by the authority of God. Is Christ an elected and accountable leader? Of course not. As the songs in the scriptures say, Christ is king. He's the king in heaven who establishes kings on earth. And in this model, those that God appoints and anoints are not to be questioned. Now, if we ignore the watered-down Christianity, and I appreciate moderate Christians, I do. I think many of the people who have ignored the awful verses and embrace the love verses, I think they're doing their best to try to align perhaps an inherited faith with their own values, their own moral centered, right? But if we're not just cherry picking the follow your heart, love your neighbor sermons, and we go back to the Bible, is it a book of suggestions? Do the scriptures say, well, follow your own moral compass and do what you think is right, right? Of course not. Time and again, the Bible lays down the literal law and it says, obey me fully. Did God tell Abraham, all right, look, if you think it's a good idea, I want you to grab your son and take him up and put him on the altar and drive a knife into his chest. I mean, only if you want to, only if it's okay with you. No, of course not. And yet Abraham remains a beloved figure, right? The cornerstone of the Abrahamic faiths. He is so admired as a hero within Christianity. Did Yahweh say to Joshua, okay, circle the walls of Jericho and blow the shofars, but when the walls come a-tumbling down, you can decide if you want to go in and slaughter everybody. I mean, I'll leave it up to you. You're a good person. You don't have to kill every living thing. Did he say that? Nope. Slaughter men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys. This was a command that had to be obeyed. Take the gold, burn the city. Joshua is considered a hero of the faith. In the New Testament, the angel appeared to Mary, an unwed teenage girl. The plan was to impregnate her with Jesus Christ. And she was afraid. In fact, the book of Luke says she was troubled. The message was what? Hey, look, Mary, this is an option. Would you like to give birth to the Savior of the world? You get to choose? Of course not. Not in the culture of command. You will conceive. You will give birth. You will call him Jesus. Mary never actually gave consent. At its core, Christianity sells a hierarchy. Conveniently, then, those who are claiming divine appointment can say that they are also to be obeyed fully, or else you risk the judgment of God. How many kings and would-be kings have invoked the name of God throughout human history? How many do so today? The authoritarian, he claims the throne, he waves the holy book, and he does what gods do. They give, they take, they reward, they punish, they pardon, they judge. Oh, this man loves to judge. Each command is also a threat. Even Trump's new official presidential portrait is designed to communicate authoritarian power. That pose is a message. Of course, the pose came easily to him. He had practice when he had his mugshot taken. All right? He speaks it, and so it is. He does it, and so it is legal. He commands it, and you must obey. Some people obey out of love and loyalty. Other people because they're just easily led by charismatic figures. Still others obey out of fear. What will happen if I don't obey? And in obedience, blind obedience, in their blind obedience, they give away a part of themselves, the authority to decide for themselves. The authoritarian Benito Mussolini engaged in his own power grab back in 1922. He was imposing, he was charismatic, he assembled some disgruntled politicians and anarchists and power players to establish a new political entity called the Fasci Italiano di Combattimento, which meant Italian fighting bands. Fasci is drawn from the ancient word fascio, which was a symbol. It was an axe that was supported by sticks. Authority supported by the commoners. Of course, Mussolini got to be the axe. He marketed himself as the strongman savior. He would often pose from tall perches, sometimes literal high horses on horseback. And he rose to power doing what? He promised, if you give me total control, I will remove the undesirables and I will restore national greatness. Does that sound familiar? Mussolini aligned himself with another authoritarian, a tyrant of absolute rule who judged and punished. That association is also alarmingly familiar. I'm not saying that Putin and Hitler are exactly alike. I'm just saying there is an association that can be made. Yet Mussolini's authoritarian rule would end in disgrace, defeat, and even his own execution. The authoritarian was overthrown. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. understood the nature of authoritarians. He said this. He said, "We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed." During the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, those in power preached that God wants us segregated, whites and non-whites, separate, America first, or white America first. But good people resisted against the shouts and the threats and the danger, defiant in the best sense of the word, not allowing somebody else to strip them of their humanity, their quality, their own authority. And with the landmark Supreme Court decision of 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, segregation was declared unconstitutional. The High Court made the ruling, but it was everyday people that applied the pressure, who stood defiantly and smashed down that barrier between minority children and their promising futures. It wasn't that long ago, American men happily assumed authority over women. "I'll do the thinking, little lady. I'm the man of the house. I'll go out and win the, how do I say this? I'll go out and earn the paycheck, bring home the bacon, right? I put the roof over our heads, so I decide. I'll vote for the rest of us, right? It's a man's world." Even the founding fathers didn't let women into the halls of power, right? In their thinking, patriarchy was patriotism. It was also God's will, according to the Bible. I do not allow a woman to teach or to have authority over a man. Instead, she is to remain quiet. 1 Timothy 2:2. But American women in the early 20th century rose up and they resisted. The brave activists of the suffrage movement organized and activated to fight unfairness, inequality, injustice. They wanted to equalize the man's world, resulting in the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution in August of 1920. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Now, of course, misogyny has not gone away, but 20th century women knocked down sexist barriers to the ballot box, barriers which had been installed by authority. Invoking God, famous religious bigot Jerry Falwell, founder of the Moral Majority, and those like him, by the way, famously said that gay people were dangerous, they were reprobates. They wanted a modern-day Sodom and Gomorrah. And homosexuals were blamed for everything, from pedophilia to the AIDS virus to the attacks of 9/11. Those in power, the authority figures, said society had no obligation to serve non-heterosexuals. You want health care? You want a job? You want to get married? Would you like us to bake you a cake? Sorry, you don't have those rights. Millions of good people banded together and formed a resistance. They stood up and they continue to stand up for LGBT rights today. Gender equality, racial equality, equality of humankind across the board. That resistance bravely battles the bigots today. And of course, we have the shredding of the United States Constitution by obscenely wealthy opportunists to flaunt their power. They ignore the rule of law. They game the system. They scoff and they gulf and they mug for the cameras. And they've still got the adoration of the cults. But as they have attempted to lock themselves in and lock us out of our own institutions, good people are rising up to say no more. So many millions of people participated in the very first hands-off 2025 demonstration in early April. They were impossible to ignore. There's Portland, Oregon, Richmond, Virginia, Austin, Texas, Macon, Georgia, Oakland, California, Manhattan, Chicago. More than 1,400 separate protests, attendance estimates north of 5 million people, no violent outbursts, no riots, no illegal behaviors, and this resistance to authoritarianism sent specific, clear, and critical messages. Just look at the signs that they were wielding on that day. No to Project 2025. Hands off our democracy. No kings, no fascists. It's not right versus left, it's right versus wrong. Here's a clever one I just had to show you. IKEA has better cabinets. Here's another one that made me laugh. A sign that said, but it was the Gulf of Mexico at birth. This one hit my sense of humor. Imagine this car filled with bees. MAGA America, come for the measles, stay for the secret kidnapping to a foreign prison camp. Honk if you never texted secret war plans. And you know, this next person was an educator. She had a sign that said, "Science keeps your dumb ass alive." I live in Red State, Oklahoma, USA. And we had a great demonstration with a lot of people there, a surprising number of people. And I made a sign. I figure if I used a quote from the Founding Fathers, it might be harder for someone to throw a brick out of a car window at me. But I had posted that picture of Trump that was put on the official White House account that showed him crowned as he stood in front of Manhattan. And I included the quote from Jefferson. It said, "I was much an enemy to monarchy before I came to Europe. I am 10,000 times more so since I have seen what they are." Now, as I was standing out on a very busy intersection of 71st and Memorial in Tulsa, it's a very visible spot, I was nervous. What's going to happen? Are any of us in danger, right? And the people that drove by were honking and smiling and waving and fist bumping and giving us the thumbs up. I mean, we saw some dissenters. We saw some people who were shouting the name of Trump, etc. But I'm telling you, almost everybody who came by was affirming our protest. What a surprise that was. I love this one from the National Mall. Next to Lady Liberty was the sign that said, "Dissent is our duty." And in the wake of stuff like this, for a few precious heartbeats, I can feel something switch inside me, and I feel just a little more hope. I know it sounds naive, but underneath this cynical shell, there is still part of me that is an idealist, whispering to myself, wouldn't it be nice? I'll bet many of you are the same way. And then I imagine again that world where borders aren't dividers and where the one true religion is just decency and we're all living life in peace. Because we have defied the commands of the kings, the people who tell us where to go, who to love, who to hate, how to live, who we are. I've always liked this illustration about the power of the people. What happens when everyday citizens recognize the power they have? Power in the best sense of the word, not power in the context of manipulation or domination. The power wielded by authoritarians. The great philosopher Bertrand Russell had a great quote about power. He said, "If power is bad, as it seems to be, let us reject it from our hearts. In this lies man's true freedom, in determination to worship only the God created by our own love of the good." And this informs the mission today. And yet, how do those who love the good make even a dent against so much bad? The so much bad part, by the way, is by design. It is by design. It's a strategy. In today's United States, the authoritarian agents want us stunned, disoriented, confused, and exhausted. This guy's name is Steve Bannon, former Trump strategist. He did a Frontline interview in 2019 where he just said it outright. The media is dumb and lazy, can only focus on one thing at a time. All we have to do is flood the zone. Every day we hit them with 3 things. They'll bite on one and we'll get all of our stuff done. But we've got to start with muzzle velocity. And this tactic works with everyday people, the general public, right? Use muzzle velocity to disorient, confuse, and overwhelm people. The more everybody gets lost, or hits the wall, or doesn't know what to do, maybe they'll give up and go home. That's good for us. I recently saw a Zoom discussion by a community organizing group called Scottsdale Women Rising, and they had a guest, psychologist Dr. Jennifer Serlin, who affirmed, "How you are feeling right now is by design. Our exhaustion is part of their master plan." Which is why I think our resistance efforts must begin with the restoration and protection of ourselves first. Does anyone else feel emotionally, mentally, and physically exhausted? Those of you who didn't raise your hands are probably lying. That's okay, I get that. I would guess. You're too tired to raise your hands. That's awesome. I think people with an activist nature, and I think there are a lot of world changers in this room, right? I think we struggle with life balance. We have a hard time shutting it off. Because we're always activisting, or we're thinking about activisting, and that takes a toll. But if you're in the race, you cannot win with the pedal always jammed to the floor. If you do not occasionally ease up on the turn, you will hit the wall. You and I are no good to anybody else if we are face down and worn out. So before we put ourselves out there, let's take a second and breathe, and let's do a little bit of self-focus. Let's worry about in here. Don't be afraid to step back. Partition the time you spend on the news sites, on social media, whatever. Oh, I can doom scroll with the best of them. I'm always next to a computer. I'm editing a video, or I'm working on a show, or I'm writing something, and all I have to do is log on and scroll, and before you know it, I've done it 15 times, and I just want to put my head through the wall. We are not wired to handle the daily clickbait rage porn fire hose to the face that is being presented to us every single day. We are going to have to focus our exposure if we're going to be effective. Hell, if we're going to survive. You don't have to doom scroll to stay informed. Beyond that, the National Institute of Mental Health has tips for those who are at the end of our tether. Self-care basics, and I think this is good stuff, right? We've got to focus on eating better. Let's try to prioritize getting sleep. If we can't sleep, at least rest. Let's do relaxing things. Don't forget to be thankful, because we all have things we can be grateful for. Set goals and work to achieve those goals. And when we do achieve them, set new goals. There's nothing like the feeling of accomplishing something. Identify and challenge negative thoughts. Am I reflecting, which is good, or am I ruminating, which is not? And stay connected to our fellow human beings. We are better together. We need each other. And then, as we activists, we can support national organizations that are battling for state-church separation, whether they are fighting frontline legal battles or providing a hub for connecting communities by zip code. We can help them to help us. I'm on the board of directors for American Atheists. They have long been on the front lines of the fight for state-church separation. Just a few more of the many worthy organizations out there, groups and efforts that we can fuel with our time and our dollars. There are other reasons to be encouraged out there. American citizens are pushing back so hard on even local politicians that the politicians are leaving the town halls early so they don't have to answer any more questions. And it's awesome. It's awesome. And then the party leadership is saying, maybe you shouldn't have town halls. And you can imagine how that is going on with their constituents, right? That is going over. Local communities, including some former Trump voters, are finally starting to get it. Banding together, they are resisting. We can join them. We can even lead them. A citizen-led coalition of librarians and data collectors is right now feverishly archiving the files that the Trump administration is deleting from government websites. They are rescuing, they are storing, and they are helping to keep safe the history, the justice, the reality that the authoritarians want erased from history and from public memory. These heroes are creating a new database. The courts are often frustrating, but many American judges are pushing back against White House overreach. Parts of our judiciary are actually defending the rule of law, not the rule of the ruler. Right now, we see about, 100 separate lawsuits just over Trump's executive orders. And that number is going up. Some 20 national leaders and members of the Smart Local 100 union have been standing up for their co-worker, Abrego Garcia. You've seen him in the headlines. This was the guy who was sent to an El Salvador torture prison because it was said he was in a gang because of a likely photoshopped picture, right? Did I say that right? It was the MS-13 gang, I believe. American unions, not known for being liberal hubs, are banding together and joining other citizens to condemn the kidnapping of this man and demanding his return. Trump violated a court order to turn around planes carrying alleged Venezuelan gang members that were deported by Trump under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. He pulled that one out of the archive and tried to implement it. He ignored the order. U.S. District Judge James Boasberg has said, ignoring the court's ruling brings probable cause to file contempt of court charges against Trump, even as he demands the judge's impeachment. Defiantly defending the rule of law and the judiciary, the judge said this: the Constitution does not tolerate willful disobedience of judicial orders, especially by officials of a coordinate branch who have sworn an oath to uphold it. Trump told Harvard it could lose $9 billion in research funding if it didn't submit to Trump's government audits of its students, faculty, governance, and curriculum. The Department of Education sent 60 such demand letters to universities all across the nation. Harvard President Alan Garber essentially and defiantly said, "Fuck off." No government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue. Resistance, refusal, dissent, standing up to the bully. And generations across the gender, color, and culture spectrum are rising up and locking arms to send the strong, defiant message that we will not be silenced. And this groundswell of courage and conviction has helped me to not lose hope. I follow American historian Heather Cox Richardson. If you do not, you must remedy this immediately. She publishes an article or video almost daily, and I'm a fan because she's able to chronicle on a day-by-day basis what has been going on in the United States. And she has said what we're seeing is historic. It is not totally unprecedented. The elite enslavers of the 1850s had control of pretty much everything, but the nation rose up, dissented, course-corrected, elected Lincoln, and began to restore government by and for the people. And Richardson says we can do it again. We must do it again. We are engaged in a battle to defeat absurdity, cruelty, authority, but we have seen what is possible when we join and rise together. In the United States, with our neighbors and allies, good people across all boundary lines, citizens of planet Earth, joining and banding and rising together. I mean, look at the world changers that came before us. Look at one another in this room and see hope and feel hope. Stay committed. Spread hope. And as you and I sound the dissent which is our duty, let's always remember the humanity that has achieved and can still achieve great things for the causes of justice. Let's nourish and revive the idealist that still has a beating heart underneath that cynical shell. Let's stand firm in our values. Let's stand tall with our friends and allies in these uncertain times. If you and I stay the course and we never give up, imagine a next chapter. Imagine a better chapter in the human story that we could all write together. Imagine. 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 Thank you very, very much.
You're in Canada. You're safe.